Today, we are diving into the absolutely wild worlds of a true literary giant. This is an author whose work, you'll see, just refuses to be put in a box, but who, time and time again, delivers stories that will stick with you forever. So, let's get right into it. This is your beginner's guide to the master, Dan Simmons. You know, when the undisputed king of horror says something like that, you listen. That is not just high praise, that's basically a coronation. It sets the bar unbelievably high and tells you right from the jump that we are talking about a writer with some serious talent. And that's the big question, isn't it? Who is the mind that earns that kind of respect? Well, to figure that out, we can't just look at one genre. No, we have to look at a career that's built on just breathtaking range and a completely fearless imagination. So, here's how we're going to break it all down for you. We're going to look at his insane ability to jump between genres, we'll get to know the man himself, and then we're going to take a deep dive into his legendary horror and sci-fi. And don't worry, we'll finish up with a simple roadmap for where you should start your reading. Okay, first things first. Let's talk about what makes Dan Simmons so special. He is one of a tiny handful of authors who doesn't just write in different genres, he absolutely masters them. He doesn't just visit, he builds entire worlds.
But here's the thing, these aren't just labels for different books. What's so amazing is how Simmons can blend these genres together, sometimes in the exact same novel. He'll give you this incredibly well-researched historical epic and then inject it with supernatural horror. Or he'll build this massive far-future science fiction story using the structure of a centuries-old poem. This kind of fearless mixing, well, that's his signature move.
So how does somebody even develop a toolkit like that? Well, his path to becoming a full-time writer was, let's just say, not what you'd expect. It didn't start in some fancy writer's workshop. Nope. It started in a classroom full of elementary school kids. Get this. For 18 years, Dan Simmons was a teacher. He spent his days teaching kids and then spent his nights and weekends creating these incredible worlds. Then, in 1982, this one moment at a writer's workshop just changes everything. And it all leads up to 1989. This just explosive year where he releases two of the most important genre novels of the entire decade. Okay, you have to picture the scene. You're in a room with Harlan Ellison, who is known for being brilliant but absolutely brutal with his critiques. He's just ripping apart story after story. People are actually getting up and leaving the room. And then he picks up your story. Can you even imagine the tension? And then he says that. Instead of tearing it down, he gives this profound validation. Ellison didn't just say he liked the story. He recognized the artist inside the man. He basically told Simmons he had a duty to share his gift with the world. That was the moment. That was the spark that lit the whole fire. All right, so let's see what that talent did in the world of horror. Because Simmons didn't just write scary stories. He took the whole idea of terror apart and put it back together in new, deeply unsettling ways. And this just shows you his range. I mean, on one hand, you have his debut, Song of Kali. It's this tight, suffocating book that uses the city of Calcutta to create this feeling of absolute dread. It won the World Fantasy Award. Then, just a few years later, he drops Carrion Comfort, this massive, 800-page epic about psychic vampires that wins the Bram Stoker Award. Totally different books, both horror masterpieces. The core idea in Carrion Comfort is just chilling. He calls them mind vampires. Forget about fangs and bats. These things are so much worse. They can get inside your head and use you like a puppet, forcing you to do horrible things, all while they feed off the emotions. It's a terrifying new spin on the whole vampire myth, all about psychological terror. And look, you don't have to take my word for it. When a modern master of monsters like Guillermo del Toro calls your book a true classic, you know you've done something right. The praise for his horror is always about its lasting impact, the way it just gets under your skin and stays there. But Simmons didn't stop there, not even close. He turned his attention to outer space, and in the process, created what a lot of people think is one of the greatest science fiction epics ever written. Remember that insane year, 1989? Well, the same year he gave us Carrion Comforts, he also published Hyperion. Just think about that for a second. Winning the top award in horror and the top award in sci-fi, pretty much at the same time, that's almost unheard of. And Hyperion wasn't your typical space opera. It was something much deeper.
So what Simmons did here was pure genius. He built this far-future sci-fi epic on the foundation of a 14th century poem, Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. And this structure is brilliant because it lets him tell these huge, universe-spanning stories through really intimate personal tales. Each pilgrim story is almost a different subgenre of sci-fi. It's just an incredibly ambitious and amazing way to tell a story. And at the dark heart of this whole pilgrimage is the Shrike. This thing is pure nightmare fuel. It's part machine, part god, all blades and chrome, and it travels through time. You can't reason with it, you can't escape it. The Shrike is more than just a monster. It's a legend, and easily one of the most terrifying creations in the history of science fiction.
Okay, let's shift gears again to another one of Simmons' specialties, taking real, actual history and twisting it into an absolute nightmare. This is where you can really see his incredible research skills at work.
His formula is so simple but so effective. He finds a real historical mystery, one of those events where we don't have all the answers. He takes all the known facts, and then, in the gaps, he lets his imagination run wild, suggesting the real truth is way more terrifying than any historian could ever guess. The Terror is the absolute best example of this. It starts with 100% real history. The Franklin expedition was real. 2 of the most advanced ships in the British Royal Navy really did get trapped in the Arctic ice and vanish. Their crews really did face starvation and disease. Simmons takes all of that, and he adds one more terrifying element. They weren't alone out there. They were being hunted.
And that hunter is the Toonbach. Simmons pulls this creature from Inuit mythology, and it's so much more than just a monster. It's like the physical embodiment of the Arctic's fury. It represents the brutal, unforgiving landscape lashing out at these invaders who thought they could conquer it. The Toonbach isn't just what kills the men, it's the why.
Okay, so we've talked about his incredible range, his history, his monsters. The big question is still hanging out there, right? With so many amazing books, where in the world do you even start?
Don't worry, we've put together a little cheat sheet for you, based on what you already love to read. If you're into huge, smart, literary sci-fi, you absolutely have to start with Hyperion. No question. If you want a massive thriller that will seriously mess with your head, grab Carrion Comfort. For anyone who loves those gritty, historical survival stories, The Terror is your ticket. And if you want a quicker, but intensely atmospheric horror novel, go with his debut, Song of Kali.
Look, at the end of the day, Dan Simmons doesn't just offer you one story. He offers you a whole library of different worlds, each one built with incredible intelligence, ambition, and a deep understanding of what makes us tick and what makes us scream. So now you've got the map. The only question left is, which path are you taking first?